You ever think about how quickly things can change? I mean, one day everything seems pretty okay, and then boom, the rug's pulled out from under you.
Yeah, life can definitely throw some curveballs.
That's exactly the kind of upheaval we're going to dig into today. We're taking a deep dive into this news report from the Jamaica Star. Yeah. It's from April 4th, 2025. And it gives a really powerful look into the lives of undocumented Jamaican immigrants here in the U.S., especially right after that change in administration back in January.
This is more than just looking at policy. It's really about looking through a window into the real lived experiences of people who are dealing with this sudden shift in their reality.
Right.
We've got this news article that zooms in on specific stories.
Right.
And what we really want to do is understand the core challenges that these folks are up against, go beyond just the headlines and grasp that human impact.
Exactly. And this article, it really grabs you right from the start with this quote, "From riches to rags and insults and crumbs is what some undocumented persons said they are faced with since the Trump administration took office in January." I can just feel that huge shift in their world.
You know what's really striking is just how fast and intense this perceived change has been.
Yeah.
The article directly links this downturn to the new administration, and it really suggests that there's this very tangible impact on how these folks are being viewed and treated in their everyday lives. And it doesn't sound like it was a gradual thing. It sounds like, bam, a complete transformation.
And it's hitting them where it really hurts their ability to provide for themselves and their families.
Yeah.
The article talks about these significant pay cuts to the wages they're getting under the table.
Oh, wow.
And they give an example of Kim. She's a caregiver in Florida.
Okay.
And her weekly pay, it went from U.S. $750, that's a good chunk of change, that's about $118,000, down to just U.S. $450, which is around $70,000.
Wow.
I mean, that kind of drop has got to have some immediate and really serious consequences.
Absolutely, a wage reduction like that. I mean, you're forced to make major changes in how you live day to day. And when she talks about having to live on a ramen noodle diet and only being able to shop at the dollar store, I mean, that paints a really stark picture of just how hard things have gotten financially. This isn't just about, having less spending money. This is about struggling to afford the basics.
And it really makes you stop and think about how quickly things can change.
Yeah.
How quickly you can go from feeling secure to being in a really tough spot.
It does.
Imagine having to choose,
Yeah.
Which basic meal you can afford.
Right.
And it's not just affecting Kim, it's affecting her family, too.
Yeah.
She's saying she can't even send money back home to her kids in Jamaica.
Right.
That's adding a whole other level of stress and worry.
It really does. And not being able to support your family back, I mean, that's a huge weight to carry.
Yeah.
And, when she mentions the partner being backed up, for you listeners, that's probably like an informal way of saving money together in the community. And even that's being strained.
Wow.
It's like this ripple effect hitting her entire support system, And what it also kind of hints at is that maybe there was already some level of financial instability there.
Yeah.
Making them even more vulnerable to these sudden changes.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The article also goes into this really unsettling change in how these folks are being treated by the people they work for. Kim specifically says she's being treated differently now, like her job is some kind of favor.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big contrast, going from being a valued employee to all of a sudden feeling like a burden.
This shift in how employers are acting is really important. It probably reflects a change in how they see the risk and reward of hiring undocumented workers.
Yeah.
And it's probably driven by the fact that there's more enforcement of immigration laws.
Right.
The article even mentions that there were 32,809 IC enforcement arrests just in the first 50 days of the new administration.
Wow.
Now, that's a big overall number, but you can bet it contributed to this whole atmosphere of fear and made some employers feel like they could change how they treat their workers,
Yeah.
What do you think this tells us about the power dynamics at play here?
It puts these people in an incredibly vulnerable position, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, Kim even feels like her employer is intentionally trying to make her afraid.
Wow.
I mean, can you imagine the stress of never knowing what's going to happen with your status on top of this change in how you're being treated?
Absolutely. And this attitude shift from employers, it's not just about a negative work environment. It has really practical consequences, like when it comes to housing.
Right.
Because they describe Kim's employers as big Trump supporters, so all of a sudden, them why make America great again and get rid of we.
Wow.
So now she's worried about finding a new place to live.
I mean, that's a direct impact, a tangible impact of what's happening politically on something as basic as having a roof over your head.
Yeah.
It really highlights how these big policy changes turn into very real and immediate crises for people.
Absolutely. And the mental and emotional toll of all this is really powerfully shown in the story about this other undocumented woman in the article. So it turns out to be a cruel April Fool's Day joke by her employer's son, pretending that ICE was at the house.
Oh, gosh.
But her reaction, immediately diving under the bed and trembling, it shows just how much fear and anxiety these people are living with every day.
That story really gets to you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Live with that constant fear, where even a prank can trigger such a strong reaction.
Right.
It's a powerful illustration of the mental and emotional burden they're carrying.
It is.
And I can totally understand why she's resentful that her employers have no empathy,
Right.
She points out that while they acknowledge the risk they're taking by hiring her, she's the one working for what feels like chump change, considering the risks she's facing every single day.
What's interesting here is how this situation exposes how vulnerable these informal work arrangements really are, I mean, while they can be a lifeline, they often don't have the same kind of protections and regulations that you would find in a more formal job. So when the political and social climate shifts, workers are wide open to being exploited. And it makes you question, what's the real cost, both financially and emotionally, for people who are working in these conditions?
What's really striking, though, is that despite all these immense difficulties, the huge pay cuts, the constant fear, the uncertainty, both of these women are really hesitant to go back to Jamaica.
Yeah.
Kim's statement is so powerful and direct. She says, Matt can't come back a yard because it don't make any sense because Matt can't work for $25,000 a week and dem money.
Oh.
That's in Jamaican dollars.
Yeah.
And it really underscores how bad they think the economic situation is back home.
This brings up a really critical point that often gets overlooked in conversations about immigration.
What's that?
People often undertake these incredibly difficult and risky journeys. They put up with so much hardship because they believe that even those tough conditions are better than what they'd face back home.
Right.
They think they have a better chance of surviving financially and providing for their families.
Yeah.
The economic realities in their home countries are a huge driving force.
So to sum it all up, this one news report gives us a really vivid picture of all the different challenges that these undocumented Jamaican immigrants are up against.
Right.
Wages that have been slashed so much that they're struggling to afford even the basics and send money to their families.
Yeah.
A really noticeable change in how their employers are treating them, which is creating this atmosphere of fear and instability.
Right.
The ever-present threat of ICE raids hanging over their heads and the added worry of maybe even becoming homeless because of their employers' changing attitudes.
Yeah.
And all of this is happening while they believe that going back to Jamaica would mean even worse economic prospects.
Exactly. This deep dive into this news article gives us this powerful snapshot of what it's like for folks when the political and social landscape changes so drastically.
Right.
It's a real reminder that policy decisions have very real and very personal consequences for people and their families, often in ways that we don't even realize when we talk about these issues more broadly.
It definitely puts a human face on what can often become these abstract and political debates about immigration.
It does.
As we've been talking about these experiences, what really stands out to me is how uncertain and unstable everything feels for these people.
Yeah.
And it leads to a really important question. How do changes in political climates and immigration policies directly affect people's everyday lives and their financial well-being, regardless of their legal status?
That's a really good question.
It's something we all need to really think about as we try to navigate these complex and ongoing discussions.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening, everybody, and make sure to join us next time for another deep dive.